Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I've got a follow-up from a story that I covered on Monday. You might remember the story about the free-range children getting picked up by CPS down in Maryland. Well, now it appears that the parents are going to sue. The story comes from NBC Washington, and they report the parents of two Maryland children who were taken into police custody after playing alone at a park will file a lawsuit, according to a family lawyer on Tuesday. It's not clear who will be named in the suit, but the attorney confirmed to News 4 that a lawsuit will be filed soon. Matthew Dowd, an attorney with the Wiley Rhine law firm, said in a release on Tuesday that 10-year-old Rafi and his 6-year-old sister Zvora were held in police custody in a police car for almost 3 hours, went more than 6 hours without being fed, and were not returned to their parents until nearly midnight. The suit stems from an incident on Sunday, the second time police got involved with the Maitiv family and their children. It's the latest incident, or rather in the latest incident, a man called 911 to report two unaccompanied children at Ellsworth Park in Silver Springs, Maryland, around 5 p.m. on Sunday. The man said he was walking his dog when the children asked if they could pet the dog. He said their clothes were dirty and they were walking around alone for about 20 minutes. And let me just explain to, and I seriously doubt that the man in Silver Springs, Maryland that was walking the dog that called CPS will be listening to this podcast. But if he is, let me explain why the children's clothes were dirty. I wasn't there. I don't claim to have been there. But I can explain why the children's clothes were dirty. See, they were playing in a park. And parks generally have dirt. And when you play around dirt, then dirt gets on your clothes. It does not mean that you've not been fed in a week. It does not mean that your parents neglect you. It means that you have been playing outside near dirt. And that's what happens when you play in a park, is you are playing near dirt and things get dirty. The article here continues. The parents say they are part of the free-range kids movement, which aims to foster growing independence in children. And I just have to interject again real quick to say how strange I think it is that you have to have a free-range kids movement to basically say that we are going to give our children the same rights that we had when we were children. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is when I was a kid, I could play in a park, didn't need parents standing over me the entire time I was playing in a park. I could ride my bicycle through the woods for hours without ever contacting another human being. And that was perfectly okay. If you look back at some of the old TV shows, like the Andy Griffith Show, Opie would run around Mayberry unsupervised all day, and nobody ever thought anything about it. And that's, from what I understand of the free-range kids movement, that's what this is basically allowing children today to have the same rights that we had when we were children. And I'm using the colloquial we. I would not claim to be part of the free-range kids movement because I don't have custody of my son. But when I say we, and maybe your childhood was different than mine. Maybe you didn't get to play outside unsupervised. But I did. And when I say we, I'm talking about the colloquial we of everyone who got to play outside unsupervised. And no one ever called the cops. No one ever called CPS. No one ever called, the Department of Family and Children's Services, whatever you call the CPS where you are. That agency was never called when I was outside playing. That agency was never called when I was riding my bike through the woods for hours. And the same should happen now, to where children should be allowed to play outside, as long as the parents are being good parents and feeding the children and clothing the children. Then it should not be of any concern to anyone else. But it just goes to show how society has sort of changed to where children are expected to always be supervised, to where children are expected, or children expect that there will always be an adult, that if anything happens, anything, regardless of major, minor, whatever, mommy or daddy one will always be right there. Except for when they're at school, but then when they're at school, there's always an adult right there. Children today, except for the free-range children, are always in sight of an adult. And it does take away some of the responsibilities that, at least that I learned when I was a kid, of, okay, go outside and you play, and then at this time is when you come home. When the street lights come on, you come home. If the street light doesn't come on, but you can't see the sun anymore, come home. But now there is none of that. It's okay, so little Billy, go play on your computer and I'll call you when it's supper time. And little Billy never goes outside to play unless they might have recess at school, and I don't even know if they do that anymore. But the article here continues with a quote from a statement sent out by the attorney saying the Miteeves are rightfully outraged by the irresponsible actions by Maryland CPS and Montgomery County Police. We must ask ourselves how we reach the point where a parent's biggest fear is that government officials will literally seize our children off the streets as they walk in their own neighborhoods. The Miteeves intend to fully vindicate their rights as parents and their children's rights, and to prevent this from happening to their children again. The first officer to the scene contacted his supervisors. Then he contacted CPS about 5:15 p.m. on Sunday. Police said the officers saw a homeless man, quote unquote, eyeing the children. The officer contacted another CPS employee about 6:10 p.m. for guidance, and around 6:40 p.m. the CPS told him that they were still making a decision. The decision to transfer the children to CPS in Rockville, Maryland, was made around 7:20 p.m., according to the police. 10-year-old Rafi said, "I thought I was going to be taken away from my parents." He told News 4 that he did not get to see his parents for hours. They kept saying, "You can see them in a little bit." Finally, at 10:30, I got to see them. CPS confirmed it is investigating reports that the children were alone on Sunday. In a message posted on Facebook on Sunday, Danielle said CPS made both her and her husband sign a safety plan in order to bring the children home. She said the entire ordeal has left the family exhausted and terrified. There's more on this and why the Miteev family should or possibly will win in court when we come back. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. All of your funds on Coinbase are safe, with approximately 90% of customer funds being stored offline, and all wallets are stored using AES 256 encryption. To date, Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the FANS program. FANS are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So the Maitive family is going to be suing possibly CPS, possibly the Montgomery County, Maryland police. We're not sure who exactly is being sued, but they will be suing someone, and the lawyer says it will happen soon. And the Washington Post has a brilliant article titled How the Constitution Protects Free-Range Parents. The article begins, Montgomery County, Maryland police and CPS officials recently detained 6-year-old Rafi and his 10-year-old Rafi and his 6-year-old sister Dvora for hours merely because they were seen walking home from a local park alone, including a lengthy period in which they were not allowed to contact their parents. They were picked up by police just 3 blocks from their home. CPS previously detained the children for exactly the same reason in December, investigated the parents for supposed neglect, and tried to pressure them into changing their parenting practices. The parents who believe in following a free-range approach to child raising that fosters autonomy and responsibility intend to file a lawsuit against CPS. The Washington Post article reports, or rather they write, parental rights and the 14th Amendment. I don't know yet for certain what issues will be raised in the suit, but I hope that the Maitivs will make the case that the state has violated parental rights protected by the 14th Amendment. Long-standing Supreme Court precedent strongly suggests that free-range parents are entitled to protection against the kind of state interference with their child-raising decisions that happened here. In 2 landmark cases in the 1920s, Meyer v. Nebraska and Pierce v. Society of Sisters, the Supreme Court ruled that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment protects parents and guardians to, quote, direct the upbringing and education of children under their control, end quote. In Pierce, the court applied that right to strike down an Oregon law requiring all children ages 8 to 16 to attend public rather than private schools, despite the state's argument that standardized public schooling would ensure that all children got a good education. In a case from 2000, Troxel v. Granville, the court reaffirmed the fundamental rights of parents to make decisions concerning the care, custody, and control of their children, which it called perhaps the oldest of the fundamental liberty interests recognized by this court. Let me skip down. Why this should be relatively easy. The Supreme Court has always indicated that parental rights are not absolute. The state can intervene to protect children against serious threats to their health and safety and to ensure that all children get at least a basic education. But as Troxel makes clear, the state cannot infringe on parental control over child raising unless they have real evidence showing that there is a genuinely significant threat to the children's safety and well-being. Otherwise, as Justice O'Connor's opinion makes clear, the authorities must respect the presumption that fit parents act in the best interest of their children. Forcibly detaining elementary school-aged kids for walking by themselves in a safe middle-class neighborhood does not even come close to meeting the necessary standard. Statistically, such walking is extremely safe and probably less dangerous than police officers' action in forcefully detaining the children and driving them to a CPS office, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Car accidents are a leading cause of death among small children. Riding in a car as a passenger is far more dangerous for children than walking in most neighborhoods. Far from protecting the two children, the police and the CPS probably put them at greater risk than they were exposed to beforehand, though the risk is still very low in an absolute sense. The Mighty's parenting practices are also much safer than numerous typical childhood activities, such as participating in contact sports like basketball and hockey, or even going downhill skiing. If CPS can force parents to stop letting their children walk home from the park, it can similarly target every other comparably risky activity, including numerous sports and even driving the children in a car. Let me skip down here a little bit, and they write, but sadly, common sense is often in short supply on these issues. Until it returns, the Mighty's and other free-range parents may need to vindicate their rights in court. Perhaps this case will set a precedent that deters similar government misconduct in the future. Like unruly children, misbehaving government officials sometimes need a dose of external discipline to get them to mend their ways. Thomas Jefferson's famous line may well be appropriate here. In questions of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. And while I don't necessarily agree with the whole, Constitution humping aspect here, but if, there is a Constitution and governments are supposed to abide by the Constitution, then taking them to court and saying, hey, your rules say that you can't do this, then, okay, sure, go for it. I hope that they're successful. I also hope that the Mighty family winds up getting out of Maryland and going someplace that would actually be safer for them, their sanity, and their children, and the sanity of their children. And I'm not claiming that New Hampshire is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're around other people that have similar beliefs and that will stand by you when issues like this arise, then yes, New Hampshire is a good place for people that support liberty and want to make a better society. So if the Mighty family is listening, and again, I have no delusions that they would be, but if by some chance they are, then I would like to extend the invitation to sign the Free State Project statement of intent that says that you intend, after 20,000 people have signed, that within 5 years you intend to move to New Hampshire to exert the fullest practical effort to the creation of a society where the maximum role of government is protection of life, liberty, and property. I extend that invitation to all free-range parents. And quite frankly, anybody that believes in the ideas of liberty, but especially the people that are being targeted by government. Those are the people that are most likely to want to change the situations that they are in. And one way you can change the situation you're in is to change the environment that you're in and change your surroundings. And I do think that the Free State Project would be good for these people, and it would be good for the Free State Project to have these people. FreeStateProject.org is where you can find out more about that. When we come back, I want to talk about the Alaska Airlines thing because it's just an incredible story, and I might have a little more knowledge than your average journalist. I'll talk about that when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com.
Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker will be available on February 19th. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So before I get into this story about the Alaska Airlines thing, and hopefully you know the story. If not, I'll give just a little bit of backstory. But I had a question, and this was asked of me, I think yesterday, might have been Wednesday after I posted the Ask Me Anything. And this is not really an Ask Me Anything question, so I'm going to go ahead and answer the question. Now, I was asked, I often talk about the show notes. I'll post links to stories in the show notes, and the question was, where can I find the show notes? So the show gets posted on SoundCloud. It gets posted on Spreaker. From Spreaker, it gets posted on iHeartRadio. And there are several internet radio stations that carry the show. So if you're listening on any of the outlets really, and you want the show notes, what you can do is go fppradio.com, and then on the side you will see where it's like the last 7 shows that got posted, and just click on one of those. And if you know which episode it is, like this is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio episode, I believe, 166. So, you can find the SoundCloud page for FPP Radio, and everything is on there. Find the episode, click on the episode, and then below, where up at the top it's going to be real big across, there's basically the player. And beneath that, there's the description and the show notes. And it might have the, just the description and then show more. Click the show more. And then that's where all the show notes are. I wish that it was easier. I wish that there was some way where I could easily create an entry on fppradio.com for every show that I post. But there's not an easy way for me to do that. So show notes are on both the SoundCloud and the Spreaker. I prefer people going to the SoundCloud because that is definitely the more listened to of the outlets if you're listening to the podcast. But the reason I have the Spreaker is because Spreaker sends the show to iHeartRadio. For some reason, iHeartRadio does not have an agreement with SoundCloud, so I have to have the show on Spreaker to get the show on iHeartRadio. So that's really the only reason I use Spreaker at all, is to get the show on iHeartRadio. And there's also, I hardly ever mention this at all, the shows are also on YouTube, youtube.com/FPP Radio, I believe. But there's very few people that ever listen to that, and the only reason they're up on YouTube is because it gets posted there automatically when I post it on Spreaker. So, show notes. Find the SoundCloud entry for the show, and show notes are up under the player. So the article, or rather, let me give the backstory about this Alaska Airlines thing. You may have heard the story earlier in the week. I have not yet reported on the story, but it got mainstream attention, where a baggage handler and I didn't know this until reading the article yesterday, He did not actually work for Alaska Airlines. He worked for a contracted company. The contracted company is Menzies Aviation. And what happened, this employee was loading one of the bins, and he fell asleep in the bin. And one of his coworkers did not check to make sure that there was no human in the bin, nothing that was not supposed to be in the bin, and shut the door. They tried, according to the article, and I will read the article here, one of the coworkers asked, hey, where's this other guy? I don't know. Tried calling his cell phone, didn't get an answer, and said, oh, well, maybe he's already left for the day. Well, the reason he didn't answer the phone is because he was taking a nap. And he was taking a nap inside the airplane. He woke up, and the plane was in flight. And he realized he was trapped in the plane. So he starts banging on, for him, what would be the ceiling of the bin. For everyone else, it was the floor of the airplane. And people are like, what's going on? Well, what's that noise? And there was an air marshal on the plane who realized, wait a second, there's somebody down there. So they're talking through the floor to the person, and they got word to the pilot. Pilot turns around, goes and relands at the airport in Seattle. It was a flight from Seattle to, I believe, Los Angeles. So they turn around, go land in Seattle, and then the guy gets off the plane. The initial news story said it is unknown how he got trapped in the plane. Well, he fell asleep. And here's where my personal insight, because I did used to work for an airline, so here's where my insight comes in rather handy, because the question is, well, how does somebody fall asleep in the belly of an airplane? Well, it's easy, especially if you're working a really early shift or a really late shift or a really long shift. In this case, it was a very early shift. And, you wake up, it's still dark outside. Doesn't matter if you've had coffee or large amounts of caffeine or not. If you're sitting still for long enough and it's dark, there's a very good chance that you're going to fall asleep, because that's what your body is trained to do, is to fall asleep when it's dark and you're not moving. And I don't know if this particular plane was delayed, but I know that I have fallen asleep in the belly of planes before when I worked for the airline. There was one time when I had been sitting down for maybe 2 minutes after finishing all of the stacking of the bags, sat down waiting on any final bags. Next thing I know, my supervisor's tapping me on the shoulder. Darryl, wake up, get out of the plane, we got to push it out of here. The other memorable time that I fell asleep in the belly of a plane, there was a delay on the flight. I was already in the bin waiting to load bags. Get told, hey, there's a delay. I said, are there any other flights coming in anytime soon? Nope. No flights coming in anytime soon. All right, cool. I'll just stay in the bin. And after about 10, 15 minutes of just sitting there, I happened to have fallen asleep. Sometime later, I wake up, and all I see is sky. And I start having vertigo for a second, thinking, holy crap, I'm 30,000 feet up, and the bin door is open. Like, how did they not notice this? And then I looked down. I was scared to look down because, again, I thought I was 30,000 feet up in the air. I look down and see that the ground's 5 feet below me. But it freaked me out for a second. And had I had coworkers that were a-holes, they would have just shut me in there. Or just not even looked to see if I'm in the bin. And it happens. But none of the stories that I've heard have explained how it happens. They had a security expert, and he was like, I have no clue how this happens. Here's how it happens. You get tired, you fall asleep, one of your a-hole coworkers shuts the door on you. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. The article, it'll be in the show notes. And don't forget, every Wednesday is the Ask Me Anything. Send those questions, AMA@fppradio.com.